All right. We're going like quick. We've got about 25 minutes. And then we've got football to watch. We got Boise State and South Florida. About 25 minutes. So that's how much we got. I got 5 games to break down. We got to finish up the week 2 slate. Calvin could not join us. He had a conflict come up. But it's all good. We push through, we persevere. How's everyone doing? Welcome to the show. We are just getting started. I've got 5 games to break down that we did not get to on Tuesday. Once again, Cal cannot join us. He had something come up. So we are just going to push through these. We got about 20-ish minutes before South Florida and Boise State kick off. So we're just gonna push through these games real quick. Let me pull something up real quick to make sure audio is all good. How's everyone doing? Just pull something up real quick and then we will get right into the show. All right. I can now hear myself. That is good. All right. Let's hit this intro and then we will get right into it.
Welcome to the Love for the Game podcast. Here's your host, Reed Napper.
All right. And welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Love for the Game podcast. I'm your host, Reed Napper. Thank you for joining us on this super quick live episode of the show. Once again, Cal could not join us. He was supposed to be here, but he had something come up. So hope everything is good. What is up, Headgear? How's it going, brother? All right. We got 5 games to break down that we did not get to on Tuesday. And as you see on the screen, we're going to start off with our second of 3 headliner matchups. We got the LSU Tigers going into the opposing Death Valley in Clemson. This is the number 9 team against the number 4 team in the AP poll. This will take place at 8 o'clock tomorrow over on ABC in Clemson, South Carolina. As I just said, the Battle of the Death Valleys. LSU and Clemson both named their stadiums, their home environments, Death Valley. So very interesting to see who's going to come out on top of this one and be the real Death Valley. Two Heisman favorites battling it out at quarterback here in this matchup. Garrett Nussmeier for LSU versus Cade Klubnik for Clemson. Clemson favored in this game by 3.5 points, over under total of 57.5. The keys to the game, I think most of it really comes down to the quarterback play. At least on LSU's side, under Brian Kelly, they've lost their last 5 their last 5 season openers straight up. Haven't had a college football playoff berth under his tenure so far. Look to finally get over that hump, hopefully win an opener in their hardest season opener that they have had under his tenure so far. And he said the other day that they've spent a little over $18 million on their current roster, which I think is a little outrageous. Arguably the most expensive roster in the sport. But for Garrett Nussmeier, that offense looks to be really potent. Offensive weapons galore, namely led by Barian Brown, Aaron Anderson, Xavier Thomas, and Chris Hilton to lead that wide receiver group. Tradez Green, Bauer Sharp to lead the tight ends. Caden Durham in the backfield with Caleb Jackson. So a lot of playmakers for Garrett Nussmeier to use on the offensive side of the ball, and I think it's going to really be key for him to limit the turnovers, be able to just stay efficient, take what's given to him. Honestly, I think that's the biggest key for him. And the O-line looks to be a question mark for LSU, at least offensively. Tyree Adams at left tackle, DJ Chester is back at center. Virginia Tech transfer Braylon Moore comes in at guard. The biggest question mark for LSU offensively is will their offensive line be able to improve the run game? Because last year they weren't really able to run the ball at all. at least effectively, most of the offensive production was through Garrett Nussmeier with over 4,000 passing yards, to the stout wide receivers that he had in that group last year. And namely defensively for LSU, going into the second year under coordinator Blake Baker. Star linebacker Whit Weeks returns with new additions on the defensive line, Patrick Payton and Jake Pyburn, namely Jack Pyburn from Florida. Jamari Butler, Gabriel Relaford also coming back. And the biggest key, or possibly the biggest key to LSU's success defensively, or at least taking another step up defensively this year, could be the return of Harold Perkins, who got injured during the UCLA game last season and missed all of last year after that injury. So, and their secondary looks to be revamped, but a strong point of the defense. Delane comes over from Virginia Tech. Jakeem Jackson, freshman DJ Pickett has been making a name for himself in camp. So a lot of positives for LSU coming into this game, coming through fall camp. But the biggest question marks for me so far, O-line, and how that O-line really, continues to grow as a group, especially with the incoming transfers coming over. You don't just gel, automatically. Do they have synergy throughout camp, and really will they be able to improve that run game? I think if they somehow improve the run game enough against a stout Clemson defensive front, I think they'll have a real chance in this game. But again, that's yet to be seen. At least on Clemson's side, Cade Klubnik returning at quarterback, one of the most productive quarterbacks in the country last year, returning with one of the most productive teams in the country, returning the most production of any other team in the country. Dabo Swinney finally dipping into the portal, getting a few key pieces out of the transfer portal. One player to watch out for, Adam Randall, a converted wide receiver taking over a running back after Phil Maffa graduating for the Tigers. And they returned their top three receivers, arguably one of the best receiver rooms in the country, led by Antonio Williams, Brian Wesco Jr., and TJ Moore. They have one of the best O-line groups returning in the country. I think they've returned 4 or 5 starters on that offensive line. And Tom Allen takes over as the defensive coordinator for the Tigers, coming over from Penn State, who led them to a top 5 defense last year, led by Peter Woods, TJ Parker on the defensive line. And per Pro Football Focus, they have the 4th ranked secondary coming into the season. So a lot of continuity for Clemson, a lot of returning production on both sides of the ball. My number one team in my preseason rankings, the Clemson Tigers. And, I think I'm going to lean on them here. I think I'm going to take the 3.5. I'm going to take Clemson to win this game. And I truly believe that the difference maker is all of that continuity returning for Klubnik, that offense, Tom Allen taking over that defense. I think Dabo Swinney, this is one of the best rosters he's had, at least in the past few seasons under his tenure at Clemson. LSU, as I said, 0-5 in their last 5 season openers, and 2-4 to finish the season last year, 2-4 against the spread in their last 6. Clemson in their last 5 last season, they were 1-4 against the spread, and in the last 2 seasons, 1-6 against SEC opponents against the spread. But since 2015 as a home favorite, only 31-33-1 as a home favorite. Again, I project Clemson with their offensive continuity. I really think they're gonna take a step forward. I project them to win this game maybe 27-21. I think it's going to be low scoring. I think whichever team really gets to 24 points first is going to be the deciding factor. So I lean under in this game too. I think that both defenses are really going to make a name for themselves. But if I had to pick a team's defense over the other, I'm going to lean towards Clemson. And that is my pick. I'm taking Clemson minus 3.5 to beat the LSU Tigers and be the true Death Valley. Moving over to our next game, we've got the Sunday 3:00 game, South Carolina and Virginia Tech. This one will be taking place down in Atlanta. Again, 3:00 kick. Let me just find my notes. There we go. All right. Virginia Tech and South Carolina. South Carolina coming in as the 13th ranked team, favored by 7.5, over under total of 52.5. Keys to the game: two of the best players in the country for South Carolina versus a ton of question marks and unknowns for Virginia Tech. Let's get into the Hokies. Kyron Drones returning a quarterback for Brent Pry, going into his 4th year as the head coach. Is he really on the hot seat though? I personally think so. At least if he doesn't get off to a solid start here against South Carolina, at least be competitive in this game, I think questions are really going to be brought up on his job safety for sure. They haven't finished the season ranked under his tenure so far, so I think it's really key that he gets off to a good start here. They lost a lot through the portal, but also brought back a lot through the portal with a lot of unknown talent replacing it. Mainly a wide receiver. I don't really know what they're going to get at wide receiver for Kyron Drones. They have 3 transfers added into that running back room, which I think could be something that they lean on in this game, especially with those unknowns at wide receiver. Massive turnover on the defensive line that reports through camps have said has been the strength of the defense so far. So I think that's definitely something to be positive about for Virginia Tech. And of course, Brent Pry being a former defensive coordinator at numerous stops, I think is something definitely to look out for, because he's mainly a defensive coach. So if the reports are saying that their defensive line has been a strong suit of the defense, has been a strong point, then I think that's something to definitely keep an eye out for. But mainly discussing this game, this is going to be about South Carolina coming off the heartbreak of last season. We're in the discussions of being a fringe playoff team and just couldn't get over the edge. In the end, they returned potentially the best quarterback in the SEC in some conversations in Lenora Sellers, a Heisman candidate going into the season, looking to lead a dynamic offense through the air and ground. And finally, Russell Faison, transfer running back from Utah State, finally did get NCAA approval to play this season. So he'll take over the running back spot, as he had over 1,000 rushing yards last season. And what I think looks to be a solid offensive line for South Carolina if they stay healthy. But the biggest question marks around South Carolina offensively look to be around the receiver group. But reports have been saying that they have good receiver depth behind their number 1 wide receiver, Nick Harbor. So if they're going to get good production out of the wide receiver group, I think South Carolina is definitely a team to watch out for, mainly because they're gonna establish the run game with Sellers and Faison. But if they're able to bring balance in that and be able to swing the ball around a little bit, throw it to anyone else other than Nick Harbor, I think that's going to be a great benefit to them. Dylan Stewart returns as potentially the best edge rusher in the country, but a lot of differences around him. Mainly their interior defensive line has been switched over from last season coming into this season. They did lose a few linebackers as well, but they do have a top 20 portal class. And really the biggest question marks for South Carolina on both sides of the ball, the receivers offensively and secondly on defense. Who else on the D-line is really going to make an impact on the run game and the pass game to get pressure on Kyron Drones other than Dylan Stewart? So those are the biggest question marks for me with South Carolina. I'm actually going to stay away from a side in this game. I think 7.5 is kind of a funky number because you could get Virginia Tech, kicking a field goal with under a minute left in the game, and then you're not covering by a touchdown. I think it's just a funky number. I don't like it. And I haven't looked at the updated lines, but when I was doing my research and making the graphics, this was the line I got, 7.5. So I'm going to stay away. If I had to pick a side, I'm actually going to lean Virginia Tech to cover the 7.5. Again, just a funky number, But if I had to pick a lock for this game, I actually like the over 52.5. I think both offenses are going to find some way to get the ball up and down the field. Mainly South Carolina, if they're able to run the ball effectively, if they're able to also spread it out to the receivers that have been making a lot of noise throughout camp, I think that's going to be beneficial for the score. And if Virginia Tech can get, say, 1 or 2 touchdowns at the end of the day, I think that'll be good enough to get the over. I project South Carolina to win this game, say 34-21, 34-28, somewhere in that realm. Again, I don't think Virginia Tech, especially under Brent Pry, he's been able to, keep games similarly close. So I think leaning Virginia Tech in that funky number, I'm going to take Virginia Tech to cover the 7.5, but my main play would have to be South Carolina and Virginia Tech over 52.5. Virginia Tech 80% covered the 7.5 line in 2024, and the games and 8 of their 13 games last season went over. For South Carolina, they covered in 67% against the spread last season and went over in half of their games last season in 2024. So I think 52.5 is just too low of a number in my opinion. I think we're going to get at least some semblance of back and forth offense in this game. Virginia Tech, and I trust Brent Pry to at least, be somewhat competitive in this game. I think he feels the pressure for his job down there in Blacksburg, and I think he's really gonna get his squad ready to go for this game for sure. But biggest question mark for Virginia Tech, who's going to help out Kyron Drones at the receiver position? That's going to be the biggest question mark for them, at least offensively. Going into our last headliner game, we got about 10 minutes left, and then we got to go watch Boise State in South Florida. But into our last headliner game of the weekend, number 6 Notre Dame going down to Coral Gables to take on the Miami Hurricanes, the 10th ranked team in the country, according to the AP poll. Notre Dame going into this game as a 2.5-point favorite, over under total of 49.5. This will happen at 8 o'clock on Sunday evening. Potential hurricane weather, funny enough. There's said to be, thunderstorms in the area going into Sunday evening. So that could definitely be a big factor whether this game gets played or not. Of course, the classic convicts versus Catholics rivalry. And the biggest standout points of this game are the 2 new quarterbacks for both of these teams. Notre Dame, of course, playing for a national championship last year and falling short to Ohio State. They come in with a new quarterback, CJ Carr, after going into a battle with Kenny Minchey into the fall camp. Reports have been saying that Kenny Minchey was keeping it closer than expected, but I think CJ Carr was the better quarterback. I think he brings a dual threat ability similar to Riley Leonard last year, except CJ Carr is a way better passer than Riley Leonard was, and he has potential to be Marcus Freeman's best quarterback yet under his tenure. And I think Marcus Freeman is a top 5 head coach in the country right now for sure. They bring great continuity on the offensive line. Arguably the best running back duo in the country with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price splitting carries in the backfield. And I think a lot of people aren't really talking about how the transfers that they've brought in at the receiver position are actually probably the most slept on part of Notre Dame coming into this season. They bring back Jaden Greathouse and Faison, but they bring in Malachi Fields from UVA and Will Pauling from Wisconsin. Those were two top receivers for both those teams. I think Notre Dame sneakily has a really, really good receiver group coming into this season. Chris Ash taking over as defensive coordinator looks to replicate the defensive success of last season, and their strength for that defense is on the defensive line, returning a lot of key players on that defensive line. Their secondary is also bringing back a lot of continuity, which I think could play in their favor. So definitely leaning more Notre Dame in this instance, as I'm about to get into. Mario Cristobal for Miami, falling flat last season on the back end, falling just short in 2024 with a couple key losses at the end of their season, namely to Syracuse on the road, which sent Clemson to the ACC championship. But a lot of turnover for Miami coming into this season. They bring in Carson Beck from Georgia, who didn't really leave Athens on the best note. Definitely arguably got ran out of town by Kirby Smart and the Bulldog fans. But he comes to Miami. He's going to be their starting quarterback. But who's he really going to be throwing the ball to? I think there's a lot of question marks for Miami, at least at the receiver position. They lost their top 6 offensive weapons from last season. Their O-line looks to be the strength of the offense, though. Malagoa, I think is his name, looks to be the leader of that offensive line group. They also brought in TCU's starting center from last season. I forget his name at the moment, but they brought in TCU's starting center as well. So their offensive line looks to be the strength of that offensive group for sure. And defensively, their D line under new defensive coordinator Corey Heatherman, that was the biggest you know, weakness of that team last year was their defense, just giving up big play after big play. Their defensive line looks to be the strength of the team, headlined by Ruben Bain returning, star edge rusher, a revamped secondary all through the portal. Said to be a possible strength of that team coming into the 2025 season. So it really is a bunch of question marks around Miami. And in this case, if there is rain in the forecast, if there is hurricane level weather, going to be playing a factor into this game, Miami Stadium doesn't have a roof on it, so if there's going to be downpours, there's really nothing that's going to stop. Both teams are going to want to keep running the ball for sure. There's not going to be a lot of passing. It's going to say low scoring. I think no matter what the weather is, it's going to be a low scoring game. But if I had to place a bet on this game, I'm going to take Notre Dame minus the 2.5. I'm going to take Notre Dame to win the game outright. I lean the under again, like I said, 49.5. It is a low number, especially with the offensive capabilities of both of these teams. But I think weather impacting, both these teams are going to want to establish the run game for sure. And with that case, I favor Notre Dame in this case. I'm going to take the 2.5. I predict Notre Dame to win the game outright, and leaning under that total of 49.5. Again, a lot of continuity for Notre Dame coming into this game compared to a lot of unknowns for Miami. I project Notre Dame to win this game 24-20. Notre Dame, I think, controls the line of scrimmage. I think that's going to be the biggest part of this game, and I trust Notre Dame's run game and known D-line production to really make a stand in this game for sure. And finally, on Labor Day, on Monday, we have TCU going into North Carolina to take on the Fighting Bill Belichick's in his first game for North Carolina. TCU favored by 3.5, over under total of 56.5. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this game, mainly because it is on Monday. Again, North Carolina, first game with Bill Belichick as its head coach. A lot of 41 transfers, 30 incoming freshmen for North Carolina come in this game. There's just a lot of unpredictability with North Carolina. I don't think, spring and the players coming in after spring, 3 weeks in fall camp, I really don't think they're going to get a lot of gel, a lot of, synergy throughout that team in such a short amount of time. I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains for North Carolina coming in this game. But TCU, Sonny Dykes still as the head coach, returns off a 9-win season with very productive quarterback Josh Hoover coming over after speculations he was going to leave in the portal with teams calling his name. Wide receivers reloaded after losing their main wide receiver Jack Beck. Eric McAllister, Jordan Dwyer, and Joseph Manchak IV lead that receiver group, and a mixture of veterans and portal additions on the O-line look to make up a solid offensive unit for sure. The secondary looks to be the strength of the defense through a couple portal additions, looking to be a solid unit coming into this season for the Horned Frogs. And again, we're not going to spend a lot of time in this game because I think this is probably one of my other best bets of the weekend. I'm going with TCU minus 3.5. I know Bill Belichick and all his NFL experience with the Patriots looks well on paper, but I don't think it's going to translate at least immediately to his North Carolina roster he has right now. I project TCU 34-17. I like the over. I think TCU could put up 40 in this game, honestly, only because we don't know what we're getting out of North Carolina. I know Steve Belichick, Bill's son, is the defensive coordinator, came over from Washington. I understand that he brought a couple players from Washington with him, but I just don't think that, there's a lot of question marks around North Carolina. And I don't believe that after one game we're going to be sitting here saying, oh, North Carolina is a sneaky ACC team. I just don't think that that's the case. So I'm going to take TCU with the 3.5. I think TCU wins by 10 plus, if not 2 touchdowns. I just don't see this game being close. I think TCU with its experience on the offensive line, headlined by Josh Hoover, I just don't see this one being close in Bill Belichick's opener in Chapel Hill. So now real quick before we wrap up, because we got to go watch the first game on my Thursday best bets. We're taking Boise State minus 5.5 at South Florida. Again, sneaky spot here with the travel involved, but I don't think USF really has enough to keep up with Boise State, at least offensively. We're going to take Ohio and Rutgers over 51.5 points. Ohio playing for a MAC championship last year, finished with 11 wins on the season. I think they bring back a lot of offensive continuity that could really produce points in this game against Rutgers, who actually has the Minnesota transfer, Kaliamanakis. I think I said that right. That's terrible. That's a terrible pronunciation. I think there's going to be points in that game. Wyoming and Akron over 47.5. I'm mainly relying on Wyoming to produce points here. I think maybe Akron could get 1 or 2 touchdowns to help out this total, but I think most of that production is going to be through Wyoming. We're going to take Buffalo and Minnesota over 43.5. Again, Buffalo returning a lot on offense. They're starting a sixth year quarterback in Taquan Roberson, formerly of Penn State, Kansas State, UConn, a handful of places. But I think I think there's a lot of unknowns, at least with Buffalo defensively. I think Minnesota is going to be able to put up points. I know their running back is really good, so I think that one will go over. We're going to take Miami of Ohio plus 17.5 against Wisconsin. This line, actually, I checked before we went live. This line actually went to 18.5, so I love it even better now. We're going to take the Red Hawks to cover that spread against Wisconsin. I think this is one of the worst Wisconsin teams in recent history. A lot of question marks for Luke Fickle's squad coming into the season, and I don't really think the Badgers are going to be very competitive in the Big Ten this season. Whereas Miami of Ohio, I predict them going to the MAC championship this year. So I'm very high on the Red Hawks. I think there's a lot of offensive production that comes back for the Red Hawks, and we're going to take them to cover that 17.5 spread, now 18.5 at Wisconsin. And then finally tonight at 9:00, we got Nebraska minus 6.5 against Cincinnati. This game is a neutral site in Kansas City, but I still think it doesn't matter. We've got Nebraska minus 6.5 taking on the Bearcats. I think Raiola with his new weapons, Key and Naziah Hunter. I think there's just too much for Cincinnati to really handle with Nebraska, and especially I love their O-line with the two portal additions that they brought in. I'm just very high on the Huskers this year. They could potentially be a fringe playoff team out of the Big Ten, so I'm very high on the Huskers this year, and we're going to take them minus 6.5 tonight against Cincinnati. And real quick, for Friday, for tomorrow, we've got Auburn to win outright against Baylor minus 2.5. I think the Tigers go into Waco, get a signature win to start their season. Another fringe playoff, not a fringe playoff team for me. I project them in the playoff as the ACC runner-up. The Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets minus 3.5 going into Colorado tomorrow night, and to get another signature win for their program, just like they did last year against Florida State. I think the job that Brent Key has done, bringing back both the Hayneses in the backfield at quarterback and running back, I think could really boast well for them. And, I think Haynes King is one of the most slept on quarterbacks in the whole country. You don't just have 73% completion percentage and, just fall off the face of the earth after that. I think Haynes Key is really one to watch for this season. And finally, we're going to take UNLV and Sam Houston State over 61.5. Both of these teams played last week in week 0. UNLV, skid by margins against Idaho State, who they were favored by. They were minus 9,000 on the money line, and they were favored, I think, by 30 plus points on the spread, and they only won by 7. They were letting Idaho State hang around with them. Dan Mullen's squad, a lot to work on defensively throughout this week, preparing for this game. Sam Houston State also went on the road last week against Western Kentucky. Put up a lot of points in that game as well. Didn't really do a lot defensively, but put up a good showing, a solid showing offensively. So I think there's just going to be a lot of points in that game. And again, we're going to go over 61.5 in the UNLV and Sam Houston State game. And that is going to do it for this live edition of Love for the Game. It is currently 5:40, so we have to go watch Boise State in South Florida. You enjoy your opening weekend of the college football season. We'll be back here hopefully next week. We'll be back here on Tuesday doing a little recap, looking forward to all the matchups coming in week 2. I appreciate all the support, guys. Remember to follow us over on TikTok, Instagram, and X at LFTGpod01. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and rate us over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And yeah, I appreciate all the support, guys. Thank you for tuning in, and you guys have a wonderful opening weekend of the college football season. I appreciate it. Have a good weekend. God bless.